Good afternoon and welcome back to our program. This is one in a series of videos where we're discussing everyday legal issues with TLR Law. TLR is focused on making law accessible to the average Canadian, and that includes providing support, among other things, to small and mid-sized businesses. My name is Adam Dooley, and I'm pleased to be your co-host along with Philippe, principal lawyer and owner of TLR Law. Hi, Philippe. Why don't you introduce our topic for today?
Hi, Adam. So the topic today, before we get into the topic today, I really feel like I need to address the COVID hair and beard here because I know with video, these things last quite a long time on the internet. So if anybody looks at this in the future, we are at the tail end of our COVID red or code red restrictions here in Manitoba. So I am looking forward to getting a haircut and a beard trim while I'm at it. So. It's coming.
I think it's been about 3 months.
Yeah. I keep telling my spouse I've got European hair now with the flowing in the background, the long mane. So, but anyways, we're not talking about hair here. We're talking about more important stuff. So we're going to be today. We want to talk about how first of all, the legal profession handles small business clients. Now and maybe a way that we're trying to make that a little different and present it in a better way so that people have access to lawyers and legal services on a timely fashion as opposed to after the fact. So yeah, that's what we're going to jump into today.
Right on. So tell me, for your typical small business client, how does it work? Like, how do they work with a lawyer? They won't have a lawyer on retainer. What do they do instead? Like, what's the setup that you usually encounter?
Right. So big companies like here in Winnipeg, we have Great-West Life. They have a legal department, or Canada Life now. They have a legal department. Mid-size or larger mid-size companies, with several hundred employees, may have an on-staff lawyer that the CEO or the owner can talk to and get some advice. Richardson, for example, I know one of the lawyers there who's the corporate lawyer for Richardson. So they're on staff. Small and medium-sized businesses don't have that opportunity. Today, most of the time, if somebody thinks, if a business owner or manager thinks he or she needs some legal advice, they'll call a lawyer and say, I've got this issue, can you help me? So today, for example, people may call and say, I want to incorporate a company. What does it cost? What does it mean? And those kind of questions. So we answer those questions. And depending on their needs, we get them incorporated, and then off they go into the sunset and they start doing their business. So it's really a pay-as-you-go system. It hasn't always been like that. In the past, a long time ago in the 50s, individuals, not even companies, but individuals would have lawyers on retainer. Companies would have lawyers on retainer, and they could just call them whenever they needed legal advice. That's where the I'll call my lawyer comes from. It's back in those days.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I guess that makes sense because small companies tend to have pretty tight budgets, and having a lawyer on retainer sounds expensive. So, but you've developed, I think, a really interesting pricing model. I work with a lot of small businesses. I'm on the Small Business Advisory Council for the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce. So I think this is going to be of a lot of interest to a lot of companies. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the tiers that you've put together? Because I think that they're going to be of great interest.
Right. So just maybe to preface before I get into the details of the tiers, the idea here is to go back to those old days where you had a lawyer on retainer, where you could call somebody whenever you had a question and get an answer right away so that you could move on. Right now, a lot of people are afraid to call the lawyer because they're worried that every time they pick up the phone, they're going to get a bill for $100, $150, whatever it is. Everybody's heard that lawyers often charge on 6-minute increments. We pick up a phone and then, you have a minimum charge of an hour or half an hour, whatever that is. So there's this kind of reputation. There's this idea that lawyers are expensive and that it's just too costly to call them. The problem is that small businesses are often in situations where they have to make quick decisions and they have contracts they have to look at or they're hiring staff or a number of, they want to get an email campaign going. And they just, without really thinking it through, will just get started and they say, well, I could call the lawyer, but it's going to cost me money. I don't have time for that. I don't know which lawyer to call. The last time I dealt with my lawyer, I don't know him that well or her that well. So they actually don't. And what ends up happening is that we get the calls after the mistake is made, when they realize that that there's something that's amiss, or they receive a nasty letter from another lawyer. And then we get involved after the fact, and then what we try to do is assist our clients in those situations out of the mess that they got themselves into, that they could potentially have avoided if they just felt comfortable picking up the phone at a moment's notice and saying, look, I've got this problem. How do I deal with that?
Right. And I'm guessing, probably end up spending a lot more money on legal fees to get out of the trouble later.
Right.
So I think we've got some slides to kind of walk through what's included in the different tiers or packages that you've developed. Go ahead and walk us through what you've come up with.
So the idea here is that the tiers are set up to provide services that companies of that size need. So our first tier, which is kind of the startup company, these are companies with revenues of $1 million or less. It could be 10 employees, 8 employees, 5, depending on what kind of business model you have. And that includes, so if you're just a startup, we can get you incorporated. So that's included in that price. If you incorporate with us, we ask you to just sign a 1-year contract. But other than that, this is not a contract. This is not an ongoing situation. Other than that, it's just a month to month. So if you get their services in 1 month and then you decide it's not for you, you give us 30 days notice, and then you can cancel the contract, and then you go back to the old way of doing things.
That's nice and flexible.
Yeah. We require a contract on the incorporation for the first year, just because there's some money that we're out to get started, so we need to recoup that. So that's the reasoning behind that. It's not rocket science. We help those companies. We get them employment contracts, and I think we'll talk a little bit about employment contracts and the importance of those. Those can create a lot of liability for small businesses, and a surprising amount of small businesses, and I would say 80% of small businesses, do not have proper employment contracts in place, and these can literally cost people tens of thousands of dollars. We can look over and prepare independent contractor agreements. So if you have somebody that does some part-time work for you, or you want to hire them for a project, we can take care of those contracts for you. Demand letters, those are the nasty lawyer letters that you send out. We can send those out on your behalf for clients or customers that don't pay. And then phone calls. You can call us at any time. There has to be, I don't have somebody sitting by the phone, so I may not be able to answer your phone call immediately, but within a reasonable amount of time, for example, 24 hours, we'll get back to you and have a conversation on the phone, and you won't get a bill for that. Yeah, that's included in the monthly payment. Lease review. Small businesses like this often have to find premises. It might be the first time that you find a premise. Understanding a lease. These documents are fairly complicated. They're written in legalese, and they can be hard to decipher the first time you take a look at them. So it's important to know what you're getting yourself into in these leases, because leases can tie you down quite significantly. So you need to know that. And then we offer a discount on additional services. So anything above and beyond that would be at an hourly rate, or it could be on a fixed rate basis, depending on the type of service. And then there's a discount for our customers on that plan. So that's
pretty affordable. I mean, it's $200 a month, a little bit less, and that covers an awful lot of stuff and gives a lot of peace of mind as well.
Right. And these are kind of the services that a small business, small corporation will need if they're under $1 million. So that's why we tailored it that way. The next step up over that is $399 a month. That's more for companies that are $1 million to $5 million in revenue. So now you're getting a bit larger. You're getting some more annual revenues. The owner's not maybe necessarily in the shop anymore or on the sales floor. They might be more in the management and the leadership position in these situations. And these things get more complex because these organizations get more complex because you have more staff now. So you have to start thinking about privacy policies, and privacy laws are getting just more and more they're imposing more and more obligations on companies, and the penalties are going to be stiffer and stiffer as we go. We already know the European Union has adopted really high standard of privacy for their citizens.
Yeah.
The rest of the countries, Canada, we're following suit with those. There's going to be some serious penalties if you don't comply with privacy policies. So it's important that you kind of wrap your head around that as a business owner.
Same with anti-spam. That's becoming much more common all the time. I know California has introduced new legislation that's going to govern. It's going to end up rippling right across North America. So
right, and there's already, the anti-spam law in Canada already has some pretty significant penalties, and they have been handing out penalties. There's a fellow working out of his basement in Toronto was passing out leaflets and started sending out emails, and working out of his basement was fined $30,000. Big companies are fined, hundreds of thousands of dollars under anti-spam legislation. So these things do have teeth, and they do happen. And so you need to know what the anti-spam legislation is. Email is a very effective marketing tool for companies. So it's important that you leverage that, and you make sure that whatever client lists or mailing lists you have comply with that, because that's that can be a valuable asset for a business. Terms and conditions. If you have a website, you want to know what you should have terms and conditions, privacy policies on there. And if you want to start acquiring, in those size businesses, you start thinking about acquiring other assets. It could be other businesses, it could be land, it could be buildings. There's a whole bunch of due diligence that needs to be done, so we'll do some of that. And then we can help you in the negotiation. There's certain caveats on there, but we can, for most of the part, we'll help you with the negotiation, preparing the offer, receiving an offer, reviewing it, and effecting the transaction. So, and again, discounts on our normal stuff. So,
having gone through some of those processes without a lawyer, or can bring in a lawyer of my own, kind of at the tail end, I know that you feel a lot better when you've got an expert in your corner, and that's really what you're there for, and you're prepaid, right? So that's no extra bills are coming your way.
Right. And the idea here is we develop a relationship with our lawyers and our clients, so that you feel like you can call us if you have questions in regards to your business. We're there to help, and oftentimes just having that conversation at the beginning of a decision will avoid a lot of problems down the road. So
and there's a final tier that you've worked on. It's kind of a catch-all. I don't know if we're going to spend too much time on it, but if you can bring up that third slide for us.
Yeah, so the final tier is more for larger corporations. This is really, these are corporations that, maybe are getting close to the point where they can hire a chief legal officer, or they may want to farm that out. So in that case, for the fraction of the salary of a lawyer, you can have a lot of the services that you would otherwise have. So if there's interest in that, certainly we can sit down and talk about that. That's not something I imagine that you would just pick up the phone and say, yes, let's start a contract tomorrow. So give us a call at the office or to talk about those. But there's some information on our website about that. I think they're on the slide here that we're showing everybody as well. So it includes, each level includes everything from the previous level plus the additional points that are listed there.
So it's simple. It's a really set up. I think people are pretty used to this kind of tiering now with software as a service so common. This is kind of borrowing from that format, and it's just prepaid on your credit card every month. So it's simple.
Right. Or we could set it up on a monthly, direct deposit type thing. So yeah, it's pretty flexible.
So it looks like you're covering most of the major issues a business is going to face, but I wanted to come back and talk a little bit about employee and customer contracts, because reviewing those things in real time seems like it could be a really huge benefit for a small company. What kind of trouble do companies get into in these areas? Can you kind of maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so probably the biggest area biggest area that I see that most businesses, and I already talked about this earlier, is the employee contract. Employees have significant rights in Canada, right? Whether you agree with that or not is beside the point, right? It's the way the law is. That's how it's set up. This has been established by the Supreme Court. It's come down. It's very clear that if there's no written contract in place, the court will decide what the terms of that contract are. And they will favor the employees over the employer. Now, again, philosophically, you can think what you want of that, and it doesn't matter which side you fall on. If you're conservative, you think it's outrageous that companies would have to put up with this. If you're left-leaning, you think it's outrageous that companies take advantage of people. I'm not here to tell you whether or not to talk about the politics of it. I'm here to tell you that this is what it is. Right. So if you don't have a contract in place that limits your liability, because you can do that, the court, you're giving the power to somebody else to decide what the employee's rights are. And I don't know about you, but if I'm negotiating a contract with somebody, I want to know what the terms are. I don't want some third party sitting behind a bench deciding, for me what those terms are, because that's never what I intended to do in the first place. And without a contract, and I'm not going to go into the details here, but the biggest area of liability is in termination. If you terminate somebody and you don't terminate them for cause, and even terminating for cause can be tricky, but you just terminate them without cause because business has slowed down, because the person's not the right fit anymore. If that person's been with you for a long time, or with the company for a long time, is a little bit older, doesn't have a lot of education, you are going to be paying through the nose in severance. And a small business with less than $1 million in revenue cannot afford to pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 out in a financial year to terminate an employee that should be terminated one way or the other.
It can get really messy really quickly, can it?
Yeah, and then what you're doing is you're focusing on this litigation with this employee instead of focusing on the operations of your business. And all of that could have been avoided by spending half an hour with a lawyer saying, this is what our business model is, these are the terms that we want to hire people on, and putting a contract in place to start off with.
Makes sense. Yeah.
It astounds me at how little business owners are aware of this problem and how often this problem pops up. This is not one of those fire insurance things where, what are the chances of your building burning down? This is something that happens on a regular basis right here in Winnipeg. And it just blows my mind that business owners are not focused on this.
They're probably, I don't think a lot of business owners are even aware that they have the option to provide employee contracts, and I think that's it's an education thing too, right? They think that they just have to go with the common law that's in place and have judges rule or have the precedent that is already in place kind of govern their eventual decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's, we're going to talk about being not stupid in a few minutes. I take a bit of a harder approach on this. I mean, this is public information. If you do a search on Google, I've written about it on my website. If you do a quick search on Google about employee rights and employee contracts, there is a ton of content out there. This is really the responsibility of a business owner towards their business to make sure that they have the right things in place so that they don't blow up, or so that they don't end up in a situation where they're being stupid.
Well, let's talk about that. So that's a quote from Charlie Munger, right? So Charlie is partner to Warren Buffett, very famous, world's most famous investor, and he's a famous investor of his own right. And Munger says that he and Buffett have been successful mostly by being not stupid. That's what he says, and right. He's got these folksy adages that he likes to come up with. So this philosophy kind of explains many of the benefits that you're talking about. Having a lawyer on retainer is not stupid. It's actually pretty smart. Right.
This whole concept in the investing business, being not stupid means, not putting all your money in the next thing that you think will do well. A lot of people, we've heard about this, invest all their money in the newest stock, And, for the first 3 months, it doubles, triples, and then they go around telling everybody that they've, found the magic formula. And the next thing you know, there's a correction in the market, or there's a crash, or there's an event that happens in the world. The stock market crashes, and all these people end up with no money, right? So what Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett are talking about is exactly that. Just, be cautious. Don't put all your eggs in the same basket. Understand that something that's going really well today is not always going to go really well. In the stock market, that happens a lot faster than in other markets. But that principle applies across the board. It doesn't matter if you're in New York working on the stock market or if you're in Winnipeg operating here. Recessions come and go. Business climates change. Regulation, government regulation comes in. Competitors come in, right? Think about Uber and taxi cabs and hotels and Airbnb. Like, things change, right? So you need to be in a position when you're not being stupid. What you're doing is you are looking at the things that there's a solution to, or a protection, an insurance policy you can put in place that prevents you from blowing up.
Right. It's just good risk management, right? And with a lot of these things, the chances of you facing some of these risks is actually exceedingly high. In fact, almost certain in most cases.
Right. And the employment contract is a perfect example, right? Yeah. Even if you don't have it here, even if you don't, call any lawyer for $350 to $500 to maybe $750, depending on the contract, you can get a contract for an employee. Right. Mm-hmm. And some of these contracts look very similar one to another. You get one, you can apply that, just change the name, and then you can apply it to the rest of your employees. So you can spend $500 on a lawyer, get a contract, and you have and that could save you $50,000. Mm-hmm. Now, why would you not do that?
Right.
Right. Yeah. If you're not getting a contract in the first place, when we know that these things happen. I mean, I've been yelling it from the rooftops for months or years now.
Yeah.
Then if you're doing that, then you're just, I'm sorry, but you're being stupid. Yeah. I mean, there's no other way about it. If you want to be not stupid, get a contract.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Now, so we're calling this, or TLR is calling this is your chief legal officer service, right? So you have, in essence, without hiring someone to sit in a desk not far from your office, you still have your own chief legal officer, and I think that's great. But part of the service is to help clients with strategic planning, to try to look ahead into the future and provide advice in real time. So as businesses are planning their next steps, their growth, and what's coming for them in the future, you're there to give them counsel. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So again, it falls in line with the same thing we've been talking about today. It's about not being stupid. It's about growing in an intelligent way. I'm not an expert in everybody's business. So, for example, PR, I'm not an expert in PR. I wouldn't go and sit around your table and tell you, well, this is an advantage in PR you have to do. But what I can do is I can help you with that, call it what you want, but that risk analysis, the SWOT analysis, remember we hear about that all the time when you're doing strategic planning. The first responsibility of a business owner is to ensure that the company or the business that they have doesn't blow up, right? You have to survive if you're going to make a profit. Mm-hmm. Too many companies, they do operation-wise, you can have the business owner can be a genius PR individual, like yourself, Adam, for example, right? And you could have lots of clients, you could have nice income coming in, you can make a nice living for yourself, you can create employment and value for your clients, you can create employment for people, you can grow a brand, you can have something that you're really proud of. If you don't watch out for those other things, those things like employment contracts, those things like government regulation, those things like anti-spam legislation and how that can affect you, privacy, how that's developing and how that's not your business. You're not going to you're not going to keep updated on those things. And the way the government writes these things, you almost need a law degree just to understand them. And I say you need a law degree to understand them because at law school, they teach you to read really boring stuff. And the way they write this legislation is in a really boring manner. So just staying focused enough to understand what it actually says is probably the biggest skills that we have as lawyers. Understanding those things and presenting them in a way to the business owner that these are things that you need to be aware of, and these are the things that you can do to make, well, these are the things you have to do, first of all, to comply, and these are the things that you can do to protect yourself, to protect your downside. So
and
that's
regulations are always changing. Governments change, regulations change. It's part of the world we live in.
Right, and you need to get into it. You need to get into the legislation. I remember a while back, I was retained by an architecture firm to just go in and talk to their IT people about the anti-spam legislation. So what I did is I just sat down with them, and at their office, I pulled up on the screen the anti-spam law, and I went through it. I said, this is what the law says. Here is the section where it says that. This is what it means. And then we went through the act in the way that, you know, the aspects that pertain to the company. And then they had, they had a good understanding of what their obligations were from there.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. Well, I think this is, I think the time is right. It used to, what's old is new again, right? We started this talking about years ago. It was pretty common for individuals and businesses to have lawyers on retainer, and I really applaud you for developing this, because I think it's the value is obvious to me as a small business owner. I think that a lot of people will be interested in it. So congratulations on this, and we'll be helping you spread the word in the future.
Great, thanks, Adam.
Yeah, so for our viewers today, please bookmark this and share it. We're doing these videos about once a month, and we'd love for your comments, so please leave a comment below. Like it, share it. I just wanted to close by saying, or reminding people that TLR now has 3 locations. Fantastic. You're growing so quickly, and congratulations on this. Your locations are at Provencher and Taché, Pembina and Markham, and newest location, effective February 1, I believe, is at Sargent and Wall. Website's at tlrlaw.ca, where you can subscribe to Philippe's newsletter, and please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. That's it for today. Thanks again, Philippe.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And I'll finish off just by saying, be not stupid.
Be not stupid. That's good advice. All right. Thanks. Take care.
All right.